Hello, listeners. Today we welcome Fari Bakshian, Vice President for SixB Labels. He's going to talk to us about important considerations for labeling programs, navigating the pandemic, and his thoughts on the latest trends as a 40-plus year veteran in the industry. Thank you for being with us here today, Fari.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
So, Fari, we've got a bunch of questions for you. Our first one, how would you describe 6B Labels in a nutshell?
We started up over 43 years ago, and we wanted to innovate what was going on in the industry. Originally, when we started up, the standard delivery time for products was promised 12 weeks, mostly 14 to 16 weeks was kept. We were the first ones who started by promising a 10 working day delivery time. And within 3 years, every ad in the Yellow Pages said the same thing. And we have never, ever taken 10 working days, minus just the last few months because of the shortage of supplies because of the pandemic. But, we have always been faster than 10 working days, but that seemed to be a nice number to stick with.
And what do you believe is the hierarchy of importance someone should consider when picking their labels provider?
I'm a little bit different than most other people. Everybody talks about quality. Quality is very important and very significant. However, I feel that there are two other elements that need to be above quality. Number one is capability, because if you can't produce what I need, who cares what the quality is like? Number two is delivery. If you can't deliver it when I need it, then the quality does never get into the picture. So then third item is quality and service and price, and it's, and so on and so forth. But I think that's where we differ, that we are always trying to be a more capable company. And then we seriously stick with deadlines. And we take the word deadline seriously, like somebody's going to die. So even though our business is not that important. And talking about capabilities, we're probably one of the maybe less than a handful of companies that can offer the combination of digital printing, flexo printing, foil stamping, embossing, and combination of all of them together. Another thing is that we are one of the few companies that also sells the printers that customers can use to customize the products and the software to run the printers and so on and so forth. We can talk with more detail about those.
All right, thank you, Fari. Can you talk a little bit about how 6B has navigated the pandemic so far?
We have been open all the way from the beginning. We very quickly started adding shields everywhere in our production and in our front area, etc., between all employees. We allowed any employee who felt uncomfortable to stay home while getting still paid. And we started checking everybody's temperatures. And, of course, requiring mandate and disinfectants everywhere you can go. We have had a couple of, in fact, surprise visits by City of Dallas to make sure that we follow the mandates of City of Dallas. And we even had a surprise visit by OSHA to see if we are following this mandate. So we are, and now with the second or third surge, however you want to call it, even though almost everybody is vaccinated, but the rest of us are treating it just like nobody's vaccinated. So I feel that, again, here's one of those areas that maybe I go overboard, but my feeling is this: you never have enough information to make proper business decisions. However, when it comes to safety, regardless of whatever it is, you need to over-exaggerate and go overboard and beyond because the problem with, if you over exaggerate and go beyond, it might be a small financial problem or maybe larger financial problem. However, if you underestimate the problem, you don't know how crazy it could be. And maybe if we had not overestimated this problem, and this country would be in this shape now. So we are very serious about following the mandates on all of that. We were very fortunate that at the end of it, we only had 2 employees retire, but everybody else stayed, and we are going on. Now, in the last year or last 8 months, there has been a major shortage of products, mostly because suppliers of label materials let go of so many of their employees, and they were slow to ramp up after the COVID, first surge of COVID, and then also the freeze in the February of this year did not help the situation, because a lot of these adhesives have components that are oil based, from crude oil, etc. So because of the freeze in Texas, actually it affected the whole country. So what we have done in order to overcome some of this is that we probably have right now over 3 times the raw material inventory that we have ever carried in the company in the last 40 years. Just to make sure that the products that are more difficult to get, we still have enough of it, to make sure we meet our deadlines.
Okay, Fari. So while 6B is notable for labels, what inspired the offerings in barcoding and labeling products?
Mostly our customers. Obviously, barcoding was not a thing that we are not familiar with. My introduction to barcoding goes back to UPC labels when I was in college in 1975. I don't know how much you know about the history of it, but UPC barcode was introduced in 1974. And I personally have been a believer in barcoding because from day one, I remember my freshman year computer class, the first thing that we talked about was garbage in, garbage out. So with barcodes, there is no garbage in. The information either goes in or doesn't go in. So that is the only thing I know of, other than the RFID situations, that you eliminate garbage in. So, and we print all methods of barcodes. And while we are at it, we actually verify the quality of every barcode that we print. Very few label companies even have money invested in that. We understand all the symbologies, 1-dimensional or 2-dimensional, and we actually verify them based on ANSI standards and other quality standards. And we are even capable of providing certification if somebody wants to submit a barcode to us. And then while we are at it, we can actually have the capability of creating barcodes that are modified. So for example, if you're going to copy this on your copier, we can actually get a sample from you, measure and see how much the bars gained, and we can produce a barcode with the bars, couple of thousands, 3,000, 4,000, whatever your requirement is, narrower. So once your copier screws it up, they become perfect.
And Fari, why did you select certain third-party labeling products to distribute?
First, in most of these situations, we were also a user ourselves. But for most, what happened was, as we were seeing our customers having problems with these manufacturers, all we could do was just stand around and say, sorry, I wish you hadn't bought that printer and you had bought this other printer, so on and so forth. But after we being a user of the printers, understanding good pros and cons better ourselves, not just using the printer as for the printing capabilities, but also the quality of the print and also reliability of the printer. Very soon we were, I guess, instrumental that the people who sold us those printers sold so many printers based on our referrals that they came back to us and said, why don't you become a distributor yourself? So that's how we started doing that. As far as the software that came, we have always been a big proponent of SOTO printers, mostly because of the way the language is. And trust me, all printers are not alike, especially if you are a user. You will, once you use a SOTO printer, you would appreciate that a lot more than the other brand, especially Zebras. Again, it has been, in the case of SOTO, it has always been over deliver, but under promise. And again, same thing as the software. The software that we're selling now started up as a free software that came with SOTO printers early on, and then it became further and further developed, and to the point that it actually resembles most of the other software. Originally, software for thermal transfer printers were even worse than the word processing software in the early days. And there were so many things that were just so simple, and we were used to even in a word processor, and we were not seeing it actually in labeling software. But now with Nice Label, they have done a great job of the software and trying to mimic as much of the Microsoft Windows other applications, so people would have a shorter learning curve and learning quicker with it. But also it is very important to note, a Nice Label originally started up as a developer of drivers for different printers. So when you consider, no matter what you do, the last step of the operation is to print this on a printer. If your driver is not perfect, no matter how good you were, the final stage goes down the drain. So having the largest selection of the drivers for all printers out in the market, that is a very plus, very important point in barcoding applications.
And Fari, do you have a minimum order quantity, and why is that question getting so much attention in labeling?
I don't know. I think it comes from our industry. Originally, when we joined this, when we started up, was everybody was into making money. Of course, we wanted to make money, but it just seemed like the attitude was salespeople being commission oriented. So their first thought was, the bigger the order, the more money I make. So they would always go after the customers with the largest quantities. In the history of the company, we have never, ever looked at that. I don't know why. It's just that is not, originally it was not in my nature. And as we trained our people, that has never been the question. For us, it's, here's a customer with a problem. What is the best way to solve the problem? Now, yes, we want to make money, but I have learned throughout the years that once you consider everything else, and once you are honest and true with your customer, and you're not after making a buck, money usually follows. I don't know why. Maybe with referrals, I don't know. Maybe with goodwill, maybe it creates a good karma. I don't know. So it is very important not, again, and one of them, to go back a little bit further, is that once we came across with this smaller and smaller and smaller quantities, that was one of the reasons that we started doing digital printing about 5 years ago. And also about 20 years ago, we got into foil stamping, because foil stamp products, even though they're being very luxurious and very fancy, it would allow you to have much, much, much smaller waste. So when you consider that originally when we were printing a 4-color process label on a flexo press, we would probably throw away close to 1,000 feet of material or 800 feet of material, which if it was a 4-inch label, that would translate to 3,000 to 4,000 labels. So it was kind of crazy to trash 4,000 labels in order to print 50 labels or 100 labels or whatever the customer needed. So that was when we got into digital printing, so we can lower that minimum to anything. And we have never looked at it. You know, if customer says that I only need 200 labels, more likely we will end up printing 500 labels and we'll ship them the 200 labels that they ask for. But again, we have tried to minimize the waste on the press, so we have always been able to offer the smallest quantities.
And Fari, what are some labeling trends you expect to see in the new year?
The biggest trend is kind of like it has been going for the last couple of years, but let me back up a few steps and go with, more and more people are trying to do multiple products. In other words, before, if you would see in a standard food company, they would have like maybe one version, 3 versions of a cereal, but only the bigger companies are allowed to have multiple versions. So smaller companies were always stuck with 1, 2, 3, 4, maximum 5 products. So what we are seeing is that because we can do multiple copies in digital and flexo, et cetera, we are seeing a much larger variation of products. But still, the 80-20 rule applies, that you will see any manufacturer, probably 80% of their sales comes from 20% of their products, but that other 80% of the products are very important and allows a wider selection of customers, allows you to have niche customers that otherwise maybe your bigger competitors don't have. And actually we can see that now in that, look at now, the latest, we go far enough back that I do remember back in the 80s, the biggest craze was 40 different flavors of popcorn. So we started doing that. The next one right after that was coffee. Early start of Starbucks. Everybody, before Starbucks, everybody was for about 1.5 to 2 year period heavily into different flavors of coffee. So this started the need for having multiple versions of the same label, and also being able to. So over the weekend, you decide that you like to have a hazelnut version that nobody else has thought of, for example, at that time. If you can produce labels for that product, you'll be the first in the market. So, and then that carried on to everybody and his brother trying to make their grandma's barbecue sauce recipe, hot sauce. And, now we're seeing that happening into beer and seltzers and juices. So again, having a variety of products seems to be having a much larger number of products. It seems to be that the biggest trend. And one of the things that we have done at SixB I don't mean today, we have been working at it for about 5 years now, is to ways for customer to be able to produce labels in-house for those variety of products and don't make it look like they were produced in-house. For example, one of the cheapest methods of adding variable information onto a label has been thermal transfer printing. But everybody has been doing thermal transfer printing in black. We started up with a product for Neiman Marcus about 15 years ago by using a 300 DPI thermal transfer printer and different color ribbons. And at that time, the choices were only 3 colors other than black. And we learned that instead of, if what you're selling is an industrial product, so a white label with black text doesn't matter. People just, the label needs to be informative. However, if you're selling a food product, color is the key. So one of the key areas that we have been able to work is that produce a background that is, we call a shell, that is very colorful, might have even a fake background material look. For example, like corrugated materials or corrugated labels, or that brown craft label is very popular. We actually can fake that with 4-color process printing. There are advantages of making the fake, because if you need some bright yellows, bright oranges, bright reds, we can print those before the color so those colors stay vibrant and the rest of the background stays where it is. Now, on the thermal transfer side, we are the only company that I know of that offers 17 different colors of ribbon. And on thermal transfer, another area that is very crucial is that the ribbons that work on paper products don't work very well on BOPs or plastic films. We actually sell and stock a ribbon that is extreme. It's got high contents of resin, so it works well on both surfaces. So the clients with the smaller companies don't have to remember, oh, if I use this material, I got to use that ribbon. If I use that material, I got to use this ribbon. And we are the only one who offers minimum quantities of 1 roll on most of these ribbons. You can buy 1, 2, or 6. And we can send customers samples that are combination of digital and thermal transfer, or flexo and thermal transfer, or all of the above and thermal transfer. And I promise you, looking at the label, unless we told you that a certain portion of it was thermal transfer, it would be very difficult to detect. So, and by offering all of the above, in other words, here's the custom label that you can do, we can pre-print those 80% of your labels that 20% of your products require. And then we can print shell for the other 20% of your products that are going to be 80% of your variety. And you can add those in-house and have the advantage of experimenting with different products and having them, having good-looking samples, having good-looking trial products that people can see, can look like a finished product, and allows you to invent things, allows you to be more creative in your business, and have much variety of products. And I really do believe having variety of products allows you to have a larger niche market that would be yours, rather than becoming a commodity and everybody and his brother competing with you.
All right, Fari, so we have time for just one more question for you. What do you hope to see, or what do you hope for SixB and the labeling industry over the next 10 years?
More barcoding, more of the actually combination, seeing more labels with barcodes that would send you to somebody's website, so you don't have to have all the ingredients on the label. And when you change an ingredient overnight, the labels don't go into the trash. You can quickly get on the website and change the ingredient on your website. And even though maybe some other people's attitude is, why do that? Because that creates less work for us. But at the end of the day, we are all in this together. One hand washes another hand. So our objective has never been to sell more labels to make more money. Our objective has always been to take care of the customer. Now, if this needs ends up being into more labels, or their applications don't allow them to have less labels, then, we will always be honest with them, and we'll always give them suggestions to try to move on to a point that so their money is spent more wisely rather than going on things that will end up in trash.
All right, Fari. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and your time.
Thank you for having me.